Chapter 6. Bree looked awesome, Bobby thought. She wore a short black skirt over red tights and a silky sleeveless red t-shirt. She had tied her black hair back with a red ribbon, but it had come loose soon after they arrived at the mill. Now it flowed down past her shoulders, waving behind her as she clapped and swayed to the music. Bobby watched Bree from the small stage as his fingers moved through the opening notes of That'll Be the Day. Through the flashing red and blue lights, he could see her standing alone near the back of the dance floor, clapping to the beat. What an excellent sound system, Bobby thought. He smiled at Paul and Arnie as their music flowed out over the crowded, throbbing dance floor. We sound great. Bobby began to do his Chuck Berry strut. His hands moved automatically. The music flowed through him, around him, inside him. The set ended too quickly. Bobby wanted a quaking, shaking blur of throbbing sound and flashing lights, dancing bodies, shouts, and cheers to go on forever. "They love us!" Bobby cried as he stepped off the stage. "They love us!" The cheers faded as the DJ turned the music up. The lights continued to flash, red and blue, red and blue. Bobby pushed through the jumble of twisting, bobbing bodies and shadows to the back of the dance floor, where Bree waited for him. "How was it?" he shouted. He grabbed a used napkin from a table and mopped the sweat off his forehead. "What?" Bree shouted. He leaned closer and shouted over the music. "How was it?" She smiled. "Great." Her tiny voice barely rose over the vibrating bass, the steady thud of synthesized drums. "It's too loud to talk," Bobby shouted into her ear. "Let's just dance." They danced for a few songs. Bree, he saw, was too self-conscious to be a good dancer. She can't let go and just dance, he realized. He could see the concentration on her face as she struggled to keep the beat. "Could we go somewhere and get some fresh air?" she pleaded, as the second dance number led into the third. She pushed her dark hair off her shoulders, then grabbed his hand in both of hers and tugged him away. Her hands were hot and wet. Near the exit, they ran into Paul. He had his keyboard under his arm and was heading out. "We were great! We were awesome! Rock and roll!" Bobby cried, slapping him on the back. Paul smiled half-heartedly. "We were doing okay, Bobby, until you pulled your amp cord out. Why did you decide to start strutting and dancing around like that?" "Showbiz, man!" Bobby cried. "Showbiz! You've got to put on a show for them. Rock and roll, man! They loved us. Did you see their faces? They loved us." Paul shook his head. "But you were taking away from us, man. We looked like your backup group." "They loved us," Bobby repeated. "They ate it up." "Later," Paul said. He smiled at Bree, then pushed open the door and disappeared. Bobby realized he was still holding Bree's hand. It felt tiny and soft inside his. He leaned close to her so he could smell her hair. It smelled like coconut. "She's really great looking," he told himself. "A lot of guys are staring at me. They're jealous because I'm with her and they're not. Too bad she can't dance. And too bad she's so shy. She barely said 2 words when we drove to the club." Bobby glanced back at the dance floor, flooded in swirling red lights. Arnie was dancing with Melanie. Bobby gave Arnie a wave and a shout, but Arnie couldn't see him. "Melanie looks really chubby in those shorts," Bobby thought nastily. "Hope she doesn't split them open. Actually, I hope she does." When he had entered the club earlier, Melanie had greeted Bree warmly and deliberately snubbed Bobby. "As if I care," he thought. "Why did I ever date her?" he asked himself. "Oh well, I've learned my lesson. No more charity cases." "Let's get out of here," he told Bree. "We'll get that fresh air you wanted." He led the way out to the parking lot. It was a clear night, cold for April, more like winter than spring. The stars shimmered in the purple night sky. Bree shivered as she lowered herself into the passenger seat of his red Bonneville. "I should have brought a sweater or something," she murmured. He shut the door. "I'll bet I could warm you up real fast," he said to himself. They cruised around Shadyside for a while. He slipped a CD into the player and turned it up. Classical guitar music. That always impressed girls, he knew. He had to do most of the talking. He talked about the band, about his classes, about the summer vacation in Hawaii his family was planning to take when he got home from working as a camp counselor in Massachusetts. He wished she weren't so shy and quiet, and he wished she wouldn't cling to the passenger door as if she might jump out at any moment. "You're the one with the monkeys, right?" she said as they drove by Shadyside High, now dark and empty. "I mean, your science project?" "Wayne and Garth? Yeah, they're mine." He drove with one hand, his right hand on the gear shift, even though the car was an automatic. "It's a diet experiment. I'm feeding Wayne only bananas and water. Garth is getting a mixed diet." "Where on earth did you get the monkeys?" she asked. "My uncle," Bobby told her. He's an animal importer. He works for zoos. They're great monkeys, but I can't keep them. I have to send them back when the experiment is over." "It's a neat experiment," Bree said, settling back in the seat. "I don't think Mr. Conklin appreciates it," Bobby told her. She turned to him. "Why not?" "Because the monkeys look so much like him." They both laughed. Her laugh sounded more like coughing than laughing, Bobby thought. "Do you take them home on the weekends?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, Conklin does." He kept glancing at her as he drove, trying to decide if she liked him or not. "Of course she likes me," he told himself, "but does she really like me?" As he drove, he had a fantasy of the Wade twins fighting over him. They were wrestling on the ground, tearing and scratching at each other, each desperate to have him for herself. Did he like her? He wondered. Of course he did. She was a babe, wasn't she? At a little before 12, he pulled up her driveway and switched off the engine and lights. He turned to talk to her, but she startled him by nearly jumping into his lap. "I had a nice time," she whispered. Before Bobby could reply, she grabbed his head with both hands, pressed her face against his, and kissed him longingly. The kiss lasted a long time. Then, uttering a soft sigh, she raised her face to his and kissed him again, harder this time, and longer. "I don't believe this," Bobby thought. "She's nuts about me." She wrapped her hot hands around his neck and held his face close as she kissed him again. When it ended, they were both breathless. "I've got to go in," she whispered. She pressed her forehead against his. Her hair brushed his face. "Want to come over tomorrow night? We could watch a video or something." The question caught Bobby by surprise. He almost blurted out, "No, I can't. I have a date with your sister tomorrow." But he caught himself and replied, "I wish I could, Bree. I really do, but I'm busy." Her lips formed an unhappy pout. She brushed them against his cheek as she pulled away from him. "Good night," she whispered. "Call me, okay?" He watched her jog to the back of the house. He could still taste her lips on his, still feel the warm tingle of her hands on the back of his neck. "Wow," he thought. "You never can tell with the quiet ones." As he backed down the driveway, he couldn't help but grin to himself. "Bobby the man scores again," he cried out loud. "If she's the shy one, I can't wait to check out her sister." Bobby waited for Samantha the next night in the food court at the Division Street Mall. She arrived a few minutes late, jogging toward Bobby, her black hair flowing wildly behind her. She wore loose-fitting, faded denim shorts and a bright magenta midriff blouse. "Oh, wow, is she sexy?" Bobby played it cool and forced her to come all the way to him. His first impulse was to tell her she looked incredible, but instead he murmured in a low voice, "Hey, how's it going?" She didn't reply. Instead, she took his arm and pulled him toward the wall. "We can't do this, Bobby," she said in a low, frightened voice. "Huh?" He reacted with surprise. "We can't meet like this," she told him. Her eyes darted nervously around the crowded court. "Look, there's Bree." Chapter 7. "Huh? Where?" Bobby cried. As his eyes searched the crowd, he took a moment to realize that Samantha was laughing. "Gotcha," she murmured, taking his arm. Her green eyes stared triumphantly into his. "No way, I didn't believe you," Bobby insisted. "Then what was that terrified expression on your face?" she demanded. "You looked like you were going to swallow your tongue." "No way," he protested, laughing. "Well, I feel like we're in a spy movie or something," she confided in a low voice. "What if someone does see us?" Bobby shrugged. "No problem," he replied casually. She had thrown him off with her phony scare. Now he had to be extra cool, he decided, to impress her. "Did you bring the plans, Boris?" she whispered. "Do you know the password?" He snickered. "You're weird." Her expression turned serious again. Still holding his arm, she raised her green eyes to his. "I just feel a little strange sneaking around like this, Bobby. I mean, Bree told me she had a great time last night. I think she really likes you." "Hey, I'm a likable guy," Bobby boasted, flashing her his best smile. He checked out his reflection in a window and pushed back his blonde hair. "So, it's not nice of me to go out with you tonight, is it?" Samantha asked, staring into his eyes. "Well," Bobby couldn't think of a good answer. She answered before he could say anything. "Who wants to be nice?" she exclaimed. "Nice is boring." They both laughed. She is hot, Bobby thought, trying to be cool and not stare at the bare skin below her midriff top. She's not like her sister at all, he decided. "I noticed you in homeroom," Samantha said, following him to the ticket booth. "Hey, I noticed you too," Bobby replied with a meaningful smirk. "I mean, who wouldn't?" She giggled. She likes to be flattered, he decided. "You've got quite a reputation," she said. He stopped walking. He wasn't used to girls being so direct. She says whatever she thinks, he realized. "I mean, girls at school, They talk about you, Samantha confided. Yeah? What did they say? Bobby demanded. She flashed him a smile. I'm not telling, she replied coyly. You're already too conceited. Well, whatever you heard, it's probably true, he said. She laughed again. Her laugh was loud and throaty, he noticed, not like Bree's quiet coughing one. She has a lot more personality than Bree, Bobby decided, and it's obvious she's really stoked for Bobby the man. They stopped in front of the ticket booth. What movie do you want to see? Bobby asked. Eradicator 5? The special effects are supposed to be outstanding. Those films are so gross, Samantha replied. She grinned, then added, I love them. So, you want to see it? She frowned and pulled her hair back with both hands. I saw it already. Do we have to go to a movie? Can't we just hang out? Yeah, no problem, Bobby quickly agreed. She probably just wants to drive up to River Ridge and make out, he told himself. This one doesn't want to waste any time. I like walking around the mall, she said as they started away from the movie theater. You see so many cool things. You like to shop? He asked. No, Bree is the shopper. I just like to look. They entered the mall and walked for a while, stopping to gaze into store windows. In front of the Gold Barn, a jewelry store, she turned to him, a devilish expression on her face. Bree would kill me if she knew I was here with you, she confided. She won't find out, Bobby replied, checking out his reflection in the display window. Did you have a good time with Bree last night? Samantha demanded. Before he could reply, she laughed and pointed across the aisle. Look at those people. Do you believe them? She cried scornfully. They're eating hot dogs, nachos, and ice cream all at the same time. Think they know their way to the food court? Fat chance, Bobby choked. Uh-oh, he said quickly. I'm starting to sound like Arnie. Arnie, Melanie's boyfriend? Samantha asked. Yeah, he's my best friend, Bobby told her. Weird, she replied. He didn't understand her reaction, but he didn't have time to answer her. She pulled him into the Gold Barn. I thought you didn't like to shop, he protested. I don't, but I love earrings, she exclaimed. She tangled the 2 large gold hoops from her ears. See? Then she turned to the wall of earrings. Bobby glanced back through the small store. It was long and narrow, with a display counter across the back and walls of earrings on both sides. My cousin worked here one summer, he told Samantha. The owner knows me. Thrills and chills, she commented sarcastically. She handed him the gold hoops. Then she playfully pushed him out of the way to try on a long, dangly pair of silver earrings. Help me with these, she said, holding her hair back with one hand and inserting the earring into her pierced ear. Oh, wait, I like those better. She reached for another pair and held them up to him. Look, Bobby, silver fish. Aren't they great? He nodded. Which one do you like better, the dangly ones or the fish? Oh, never mind. I'll try them both on. As she tried on the first pair, Bobby turned to the display counter and back. He didn't recognize any of the salespeople. His eye fell on a large sign in the center of the wall. In bold red type, it declared, Shoplifters will be arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. He juggled the 2 gold hoops in his hand. They looked like solid gold, but they were actually hollow and light. Excuse me, miss, a saleslady called out from across the store. Samantha was reaching for a pair of delicate gold heart-shaped earrings. It's against store policy to let customers try on pierced earrings. Please, don't put on any more. Sure, no problem, Samantha said with a smile. Aren't these great? She asked. Great, Bobby replied without enthusiasm. I could shop for earrings all night, she told him. Well, this is going to be an exciting night, he teased, rolling his eyes. She turned to him, her eyes lighting up. You want excitement? She seemed to be challenging him. He grinned. You know my reputation, he boasted. I'm always pumped for a little excitement. Okay, she said, grinning back. Let's go. She started to the door. Hey, wait, Bobby hurried after her. Your earrings. Samantha didn't look back. With quick, steady strides, she continued toward the open doorway. Bobby ran to catch up with her. He had her gold hoops in one hand. He grabbed her shoulder with the other. Those heart earrings. You didn't pay for them. He glanced back at the salespeople behind the counter in the back. Were they watching? I know I didn't pay for them, Samantha whispered, shoving her earrings into her pocketbook. Let's go. What are you doing? Bobby demanded. I'm taking 100% discount, she said casually. As they stepped into the doorway, they heard a loud, urgent call from the back of the store. Young lady, stop. Young lady. Bobby hesitated, but Samantha grabbed his hand and tugged on it. Young lady, stop, stop. Bobby glanced back to see 2 salespeople racing toward them. Samantha pulled him out the door. Bobby, run, she cried. Chapter 8. Run, Samantha screamed. She let go of Bobby's hand and darted into the crowded mall. Bobby uttered a single gasp, then took off after her. "Stop them! Hey, stop!" Angry shouts rose over the voices of the crowd. Glancing back over his shoulder, Bobby saw a middle-aged man and a young woman running at full speed after them. "Look out!" Bobby nearly collided with a wide double stroller with 2 sleeping toddlers. He stopped short, dodging to his left. "Watch where you're going!" the woman behind the stroller snapped. "Sorry," Bobby called back, and started running again. He lost Samantha for a moment, then spotted her magenta top in a crowd in front of a CD store. "Stop them! Hey, stop them!" The 2 salespeople were still in pursuit. "Samantha!" Bobby called breathlessly. She didn't seem to hear. He watched her disappear around a corner. Bobby stopped short to avoid stumbling over 2 little girls carrying ice cream cones. Then he plunged around a corner. He felt a sharp stab of pain in his side as he caught up to Samantha. "Ow! Wait up!" To his surprise, she was laughing excitedly, gleefully. They cut across the near end of the food court, ducked through a line at the McDonald's, ran between 2 rows of yellow plastic tables. The pain in Bobby's side grew sharper. He took a deep breath and tried to will it away. "Whoa, Samantha, wait!" Past a Gap store, then a Walden Books. The pain in his side faded. He was breathing hard, running fast, right behind her now. Her black hair flew out behind her like a pennant on a windy day. He caught up, passed her, saw her green eyes glowing with excitement. She was still laughing. He glanced behind them. No sign of the salespeople. Had he and Samantha managed to lose them? Had they gotten away safely? "Whoa, Samantha, why?" he asked breathlessly. "Why'd you do it?" "For fun," she shouted. She kept running, her dark hair flying behind her, and he ran with her. People backed out of their way. Bobby ignored their angry, surprised shouts. They turned a corner past a donut shop. They darted in front of a group of teenagers heading into Pete's Pizza. Bobby gasped as a gray uniformed security guard stepped forward. The man blocked their path, his eyes narrowed in anger. "Oh no, we're caught," Bobby murmured aloud. Chapter 9. Bobby stopped so quickly, he bumped into Samantha. He was breathing hard and his side ached again. "Not so fast," the security guard said. He pushed his gray cap back on his head and stared from one to the other with bloodshot eyes. "Caught," Bobby thought. "We're caught." Of all the dumb stunts, he told himself, still struggling to catch his breath. Why did Samantha do that? And why did she drag me into it? "What's your hurry?" the guard asked in a slow drawl. We're late," Samantha managed to stammer. Pretty lame, Bobby thought. The guard narrowed his eyes at Samantha. Bobby squeezed the gold hoops in his fist. He saw that Samantha's hair was hanging around her face. He heard shouting behind him. The salespeople from the gold barn? He glanced back to see. No, just a bickering middle-aged couple. Then he turned back to face the stern security guard. Would Samantha confess she had taken the earrings? He wondered. Did she have an excuse ready for the guard? "You really shouldn't run," the guard told them. "You could get hurt." "Sorry," Samantha told him, lowering her eyes. "These floors can be slippery," the guard warned. "So take it easy, hear?" "Yes, we will," Samantha said solemnly. "Sorry." The guard made a gesture with one hand, dismissing them. "Young people, always in a hurry," he muttered to himself as he turned and headed off. Bobby and Samantha managed to keep straight faces until they reached the parking garage. Then they fell apart, laughing and congratulating each other, howling jubilantly over their close call. "That was outstanding," Samantha declared gleefully. "Outstanding." Secretly, Bobby didn't think the earrings were worth the risk Samantha had taken. His heart was still racing and he felt shaky, but he didn't want to look like a wimp. "Hey, that was better than a movie," he told her. "Those floors can be slippery, so take it easy." Samantha did a pretty good imitation of the guard's slow drawl. They burst out laughing again. Bobby slapped her a high five. "When that guard stopped us, I nearly had a cow," Bobby admitted. "He was old. We could have taken him," Samantha replied casually. Bobby stared at her. What did she mean by that? Was she just joking? "Let's get out of here," she cried, her eyes flashing with excitement. They jogged across the garage to his red Bonneville, their sneakers loud on the concrete. "I'll drive," Samantha cried breathlessly. She held out her hand for Bobby's car keys. He hesitated. "I want to drive," she insisted. She grabbed the keys from his hand. "Used to getting your way a lot?" he teased. "Always," she replied. She dropped into the driver's seat and had the car started and the lights on before Bobby had opened his door. The engine roared as she pressed her foot down all the way on the gas pedal. Are you used to a V6? Bobby asked warily. This car has a lot of pickup. She squeezed his hand. I can handle it, she replied dryly. Bobby grabbed the door handle as she backed out of the parking space without looking. The tires squealed as she went forward and roared around the corner toward the exit. She bolted through the exit without slowing to turn into the traffic on Division Street. She ignored the honking horns. Bobby swallowed hard and slumped low in the passenger seat. Samantha tossed her head back, laughing loudly. What's so funny? Bobby demanded, as she cut off a pizza van to get into the middle lane. The look on your face, she replied. Don't worry, Bobby. I'm a good driver. She got back into the right lane. More horns honked angrily behind them. Bobby glanced at the speedometer. She was going too fast. He started to tell her to slow down, but stopped himself. He was supposed to be cool, he told himself. So how cool would it be to scold her for driving too fast? I love speed, don't you? She asked, making a sharp, squealing turn onto River Road. I love going fast. It gets me so pumped. She glanced at him coyly. Me too, Bobby replied, trying to sound as if he meant it. Where are we going? You'll see. She rolled down her window. The cool wind made her hair flutter wildly behind her. This is great. This is great, she cried, shouting over the roar of the wind. Houses with streetlights gave way to dark woods. They were driving along the river now, Bobby knew. He saw Samantha floor the gas pedal as the road began to climb to the rock cliffs that overlooked the riverbank. I don't believe this, he thought. Is she driving to River Ridge? River Ridge, the high cliff overlooking the Conanoka River and the town, was the big makeout spot for Shadyside teenagers. Wow, she doesn't waste any time, Bobby thought happily. Finally, she slowed the car as they reached the top. She guided it past a couple of parked cars and pulled to a stop at the cliff edge beside a clump of tall shrubs. Samantha cut the engine and the lights, then pulled her disheveled hair back with both hands. Well, look where we are, she whispered, staring out through the windshield. Nice driving, Bobby said with a grin. You haven't been up here before, have you? She teased. Maybe a few times, he replied, leaning toward her. I think I like you, she murmured. As they kissed, he wrapped his arms around her shoulders. The kiss lasted a long time. I don't believe these twins, Bobby thought. He remembered Bree's kisses, so hungry, so needy. I can't wait to tell Arnie, Bobby thought as they stopped to catch her breath. Arnie will totally freak out. He kissed her again. Bobby the man will be the talk of Shadyside High on Monday, he told himself. No one will believe I made out with both Wade twins in one weekend. What was it Samantha had said to him when they met at the mall? You have quite a reputation. Yeah, that's what she said. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet, Bobby thought. When word gets out about this weekend, the all-Wade weekend, everyone will know who's the coolest guy in school. I am the king, Bobby thought, kissing her again. The king of rock and roll. Samantha pulled back and stared at him, her eyes half shut. I told you I like to go fast, she whispered. Bobby settled back in the passenger seat. This girl was just so hot, so hot. He wondered if it would be too late to call Arnie that night. What are you thinking about? Samantha demanded dreamily. I'm just thinking how great you are, Bobby lied. Smooth, very smooth, he congratulated himself. She opened her eyes wide. Do you like me better than Bree? The blunt question startled him. Yeah, sure I do. She smiled. The wind fluttered her hair. She settled back on the car seat and stared out the windshield. Bobby followed her gaze. The black sky was dotted with a million tiny white stars. A hazy sliver of cloud cut the pale full moon in half. I'm a little different from my sister, Samantha said softly, staring up at the sky. Yeah, Bobby agreed. Then he added, but you two look so much alike. You really do. How do people tell you apart? Samantha turned to him with a sly smile. There's a way to tell us apart, she said coyly. How? Bobby demanded. She brought her face close to his and whispered in his ear. When we get to know each other better, I'll show you. Her soft breath tickled his ear, made a chill run down the back of his neck. Wow, he thought. Wow. I think Bree really likes you, she told him, her smile fading. I think I like you better, Bobby replied. You'd better be careful, she said, avoiding his eyes. Huh? What do you mean? Well, she hesitated. Bree is kind of fragile. Fragile? You'd better be careful not to hurt her, Samantha warned, raising her eyes to Bobby's. Bree can be a little strange when she's hurt. Bobby stared hard at Samantha. A cloud drifted over the moon and her face darkened. Samantha, what do you mean? He asked. I really don't want to talk about it, she told him. Her eyes narrowed. Just be careful with Bree, Bobby. Be very careful. Chapter 10. Bobby slammed his locker door shut and headed down the hall. The final bell had rung. The school was emptying quickly. A riff from an old Chuck Berry song kept repeating in his head. As he made his way to the music room, he was thinking about trying it on the guitar. The band was really starting to cook, Bobby thought, waving to some kids heading out the door. Bright afternoon sunlight burst into the hall as they pushed the double doors open. Too bad Paul was threatening to quit, just when they were starting to play so well together. Paul had given an excuse about having to get an after-school job. But Bobby thought he knew the real reason. Paul was jealous of him. He's a good, dependable player, but he doesn't have my style, and he knows it. Turning a corner, waving to a group of girls from his class, he decided to have a talk with Paul. I'll tell him how much we need him, Bobby decided. I'll make him think he's the leader, make him feel like a big man. He'll stay. Spotting Kimmy Bass at her locker, Bobby crept up behind her and gave her hair a hard tug. Kimmy shrieked angrily and spun around. Bobby, you creep! She sneered at him. Get your disgusting paws off me! You love it, Bobby shot back, grinning. Creep? Kimmy repeated in a low voice. Are you doing anything Saturday night? Bobby asked her. She stared at him suspiciously. Why? Just asking, Bobby said, his blue eyes returning to stare. No, I'm not doing anything, Kimmy told him. Then why not take a bath? Bobby let out a high-pitched hyena laugh. Ah! Kimmy let out a disgusted cry and punched him in the chest. You really are a pig, Bobby. Oink oink, takes one to know one. He backed away from another flying fist, and, chuckling to himself, hurried down the hall. She's nuts about me, he told himself confidently. Totally nuts about me. But I don't have time for her now. I've got enough to handle. Twins. Arnie and Melanie were standing by the music room window talking quietly. Paul was noodling at his keyboard. Hey, what's up? Bobby called. Arnie called out a greeting, but Melanie only acted disgusted, narrowing her dark eyes and then turning toward the window. I see you're having a bad hair day, Melanie, but why take it out on me? Bobby demanded. Melanie didn't turn around. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. Are you still dating both Wade twins? She asked through clenched teeth. Yeah, maybe, Bobby replied. What's it to you? Melanie didn't reply. Arnie shrugged. Are we going to rehearse or not? Paul called impatiently from behind his keyboard. Melanie turned to face Bobby, her features tight. I don't believe you, she said sharply. Bobby grinned back at her. I don't believe it either, he exclaimed. Two at once. Even I'm impressed. When are you not impressed with yourself? Melanie accused. Paul's right. We've got to practice, Arnie interrupted. But Bobby saw that Melanie was determined to have her say. You have a study date with Samantha the other night and Bree showed up at your house. Is that really true? She demanded. Bobby grinned. I guess people are talking about me, huh? Is it true? Melanie asked. Bobby nodded. Yeah, no problem. Samantha got out the back door just as Bree came into the living room. Bree didn't suspect a thing. Close one, man, Arnie murmured, grinning. Wow. Melanie flashed Arnie an angry look, then returned to Bobby. Everyone in school is talking about it, she told Bobby. I know you think it's really great, but what makes you think Bree won't find out about you and her sister? Is it your problem? Bobby shot back. They're my friends, Melanie replied with emotion. Hey, mine too, Bobby replied with a smirk. He grinned at Arnie. They're wearing me out, man. They're too much, even for me. Arnie started to laugh, but Melanie's stare made him cut it short. I can't believe Bree hasn't figured it out, she told Bobby, shaking her head. How can you and Samantha do that to her? Bobby shrugged. Bree's a big girl. She can take it. But, Bobby, Melanie insisted shrilly, what happens when Bree finds out? She'll be so hurt, feel so betrayed. You could tear their whole family apart. That's the breaks, Bobby replied with a shrug. He headed to the cabinet for his guitar. Bobby studied his face in a dresser mirror. It was a little after 9 o'clock, and he still had plenty of homework to do, but it was hard to concentrate. He had been lying on his bed, his government text open in front of him, but thoughts of Bree and Samantha kept him from reading. If I had to dump one of them, which one would it be? He asked himself. They were so alike, yet so different, and they both seemed to be totally crazy about him. He had pulled himself up and walked to the mirror. Brushing his blonde hair, he studied his face, his smile. He liked what he saw. The phone on the desk rang, interrupting his admiration session. He let it ring a few times. If it was a girl, he didn't want to seem too eager. He finally picked up the receiver and said hello in a low voice. Two's company. Three's a crowd, a voice whispered in his ear. Huh? Bobby pulled the receiver from his ear and stared at it, as if that would help him recognize the caller. Hey, who is this? He demanded. Two's company. Three's a crowd, the whisperer repeated. You'll pay. Huh? What's the joke? Bobby asked, struggling to hear the words, listening for a clue to the caller's identity. You'll pay, the voice repeated menacingly. You'll pay double.